Welcome back. We continue to talk about the theology of pilgrimage. In the last episode, I talked about how St. James the Greater, the apostle, his name in Greek, Latin, and Hebrew is Jakobos or Jakov, named after the biblical patriarch Jacob, who himself was a pilgrim. And we read in Acts 1:8 that before our Lord Jesus ascends into heaven, he commands the apostles to be his witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. He lists 4 places there. And the 4th one is what's interesting to us today because he says the end of the earth. And for the Jews, but especially for the Romans, there was an actual place known as the end of the earth. In Latin, finis terrae. But before we look at that from the Roman perspective, I want to look at this prophecy from Isaiah 66. Because tradition states that James the Greater, James the son of Zebedee, the first martyr apostle of the 12, the apostles drew lots and of where they were going to go. For example, Thomas, he drew India. Peter, he drew Italy and Rome. James the Greater, James son of Zebedee, he drew Spain, the ends of the earth, all the way to the west, as far as you could go. And that's in a fulfillment of a passage from Isaiah 66, a messianic passage. Let's look at that quote. I am coming to gather all nations and tongues, and they shall come and shall see my glory, and I will set a sign among them. And from them I will send survivors to the nations, to Tarshish, Put, and Lud, who draw the bow, and Tubal, and Javan, to the coastlands afar off, that have not heard my fame or seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the nations. Here, the Lord, Yahweh, explains that he will send out envoys throughout the world as far away as Tarshish. Now, Tarshish is the Hebrew name for Spain, all the way to the west. And he'll go to the ends of the earth and gather all people. And as the messianic prophecy continues in Isaiah 66, he even says that he will take of these Gentile people as far away as Spain and make them into priests and Levites. This is kind of scandalous because in the Old Testament, only the descendants of Aaron could be the priests in the temple. And here we learn that God will choose Gentiles to be his priests and to be his Levites, to be his ministers. And this is a fulfillment in the church throughout the whole world, that we see Gentile men being chosen to be priests. Now, as I stated earlier, James was chosen to go as far away as Spain. And this is kind of a good and a bad thing. The good thing is he gets to fulfill a prophecy in Isaiah 66. The bad thing is he is sent far, far away. There aren't many Jews in Spain at this time. Rome conquered Spain in about AD 19. So there's not a lot of Jews, not a lot of synagogues that he can go into. He's really starting from scratch with pagan Gentiles out in Spain. And so he goes, and according to tradition, he has not very much success. Some traditions say he had 7 converts. Some say he had 12 converts. So he wasn't doing that well. And while he was in the region of Caesar Augustus in Spain, we know it as Zaragoza, the Blessed Virgin Mary, according to tradition, appeared to him. Now, this would be the very first Marian apparition. It was while she was still alive, either when she was living in Jerusalem or in Ephesus. She appears to him, and this is the apparition of Our Lady of Pilar. And she basically says, hey, James, don't worry. Don't be discouraged. My son Jesus is proud of you. You're doing good work. You haven't started, hundreds of churches, but people are slowly receiving the gospel. Continue in your preaching. Continue in your apostolic ministry. But she also says, and I want you to come back to Jerusalem to be encouraged, to see your fellow apostles, and I have something great for you. Our Lord Jesus has something great for you. So he takes some of his converts, his disciples, and brings them to the Holy Land, brings them to Jerusalem. And this would be exciting because he's telling these pagan Spaniards who have become baptized, hey, I'm going to take you to where Jesus lived and where he was baptized and where he died and where he rose again. So they kind of make a pilgrimage back to the Holy Land. This is all around the year 80, 40, 41, maybe as late as 44. And while they're there, according to tradition, he converts a Jewish magician. This is all part of the legend. And because of that, there's some disturbance, and he's brought up on charges, and he is imprisoned, he is tried, and he ends up being condemned to death. And he's decapitated with the sword. And we read about this in the Gospel of Acts. So we're no longer in the legend. We're back into the pages of the New Testament. and he dies a martyr's death. Now, here's where the tradition picks back up. Well, they wanted to destroy or burn his body. And so his disciples, his Spanish disciples, took the body, got on a ship, and left out of Joppa all the way across the Mediterranean, out through the Straits of Gibraltar, and went back up into Spain, landing in the region of Galatia. And there they buried the body. There's some more tradition about some interface with a pagan queen named Lupa, which means she-wolf, who tried to trick them. But ultimately, the body is set there because James was supposed to be in Spain. And although he preached there and he did have his disciples, they wanted his body to be where he was supposed to be in his apostolic ministry. And then those disciples continued evangelization. And then by the 300s, we see Christianity all over the Iberian Peninsula and throughout Spain. So that's the story and the legend of Jakov the Greater, St. James the Greater, in his ministry to the Spaniards, his return to the Holy Land, his martyrdom, and then the return of his body back to that location in Galicia, Spain. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the pilgrimage, the development of pilgrimage routes to that obscure location where the body of James was, and also make some suggestions on making that pilgrimage and why you should be a pilgrimage. Thanks for watching, and God bless.